Testing, testing. Okay. Looks like we're good. I think. Let me see something real quick. Hello, hello. Okay, just checking. Make sure I see my voice. All right. So, if you haven't already, I'm going to encourage you to, if you are watching this, go ahead and follow us on whatever platform where you're seeing this. It's at WriterWorks University or at Tanisha L. Curtis if you want to follow me personally. I'm pretty much everywhere. If you're on something and you think you can't find me or find WriterWorks University, feel free to just go to our websites and reach out. But TanishaLCurtis.com /subscribe or WriterWorksUniversity.com /subscribe will get you, full access to all the links to all our social media profiles and everything. Um, so that you can stay connected because I'm always giving out information to help you avoid the mistakes that I made and continue to make as an indie author. So we got about 30 more seconds here, just giving people time to get on. It's not like I expect thousands of people to pop up or anything, but I just want to make sure that I start on time as opposed to too early. Be sure to share this wherever you are, right? Let people know if you know somebody who's an independent author or who wants to become one, please share this with them so that they can hop on and see what we're going to be talking about today. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so don't feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't focus on things I want to focus on because I will give you ample opportunity, I hope, to do that. But again, it's just one of the easiest things in the world. If you see something that you see is valuable, no matter what it is, share it with people that you care about, right? If it's something that can lift you up or encourage you or make you money or save you time or whatever the case may be, that's just what good friends do, right? They share that information with the people that they care about because they want them to get the same benefits as well, right? So that's always my recommendation. All right, so we're at 1 o'clock. So welcome to the handful of you who are watching. This is published this year. I am your host or your facilitator, your professor, whatever you want to call me, Tanisha L. Curtis, and I'm the CEO and president of WriterWorks University. And as I was kind of just saying, WriterWorks University is in existence. I made that company for the sake of helping new writers navigate the indie publication process, namely by helping people avoid the mistakes that I made when I was, like a brand new first time super green writer. So if that's what you're here for, that's what we're about to jump into. If you're here for something else, you can wait and ask questions at the end, I suppose. But that is going to be our focus for today. So here's an overview. Talk a little teeny bit about myself because that's not really my favorite thing in the world to do, but I do understand that people kind of want to know who's in the room, who they're talking to, who they're hopefully learning from. We're going to talk about a couple different ways to publish, avoiding scams, how to publish for free and pretty quickly, usually with a lot of times within less than 2 hours. And then we're going to talk about book planning, planning a book, producing a book, polishing a book, and publishing a book. And then, like I said, I'll open the floor to a Q&A. On most platforms, if you have a question, you will be able to just put it in the comments and it'll pop up on my screen and I'll be able to answer it at the end. Otherwise, you can just go to my DMs on whichever, like I said, social media platform you're watching this on, and I should be able to see that. So once we get to the end, I've kind of gotten through the crux of the content, then I'll go through and start answering questions, okay? So my name, again, is Tanisha L. Curtis. I am, as I said, the founder and CEO of WriterWorks University. I have been writing and publishing books since the 2000s, and it's something that I love to do. I am formerly an addictions therapist, and that was an interesting transition, but it's one of those things that just needed to happen, right? Based on the environment I was in. So You always feel free to ask me about that. I'm an open book with this kind of stuff. I'm just introverted, so I just like talking about myself is a bit much. But feel free to ask me whatever you like. Um, and yeah, I write in all kinds of genres. As you can see, I got some erotica there. And I have workbooks out. I literally just finished approving the audio book for Intro to Indie Publishing, so that should be coming out here pretty soon. And so, yeah, writing and reading is literally my life, professionally and personally. So that's me in a nutshell. So there's two ways to publish a book. The first way is independent publishing, which is the crux of what we're going to talk about, right? And then the other way is traditional publishing, right? So some people, already know the difference. That's cool. I just want to give you a little bit of a rundown just to make sure we're clear about, what we're talking about. So with independent publishing, you are managing the entire book production, development, and publication process, including promoting on your own. Like you are not on your own, like alone, like you don't have teammates or help or anything like that, but it's just you're in charge. You're the boss of this entire thing. Whereas with traditional publishing, you are not the boss. You're actively trying to convince another company to basically take over your project and develop it and, market it and all that sort of stuff. So in and out, it's kind of an oversimplification, but that's basically how that works. Generally, people see independent publishing as being a good fit if they are ambitious, if they love to learn new skills, because there will be a lot, if they're flexible enough to make adjustments as the market and society and technology and all these different things change over the course of their career. They want to be in control of all of these different aspects of developing and publishing a book. So what the cover looks like, if it needs illustrations, what they look like, hiring, finding, vetting, and hiring the various kinds of editors that they may work with over the course of the life of the project, so on and so forth. So if you like that sort of thing, where you like managing those sorts of things, then becoming an independent author may actually be a pretty good fit. And another thing that a lot of people like is that on a per book basis, indie authors generally make a lot more money than traditionally published authors. Again, let me underline that, on a per book basis. So for example, someone who's traditionally published may have a book that's selling for $15 or $20 a copy, and they may make somewhere between 10 and 50 cents per book out of that $15 or $20. Whereas if you're an indie author, you're going to make usually multiple dollars off a $15 or $20 book, right? Somewhere around 5 to 10 in a lot of cases. So that is something to consider as well, right? So, but the difference may be, depending on who you get signed up with as a traditional author, you may sell exponentially more books with a larger publishing house that's more established. And so even though you're only making, like I said, 10 or 50 cents per book sold, if you were to be able to sell millions of books, that adds up, pretty quickly to a decent amount of money. Whereas as an indie author, you may be more likely to sell dozens or maybe hundreds of books relatively easily, and you push a little bit harder to get into the like quadruple and quintuple digits and stuff like that, as far as book sales go. But if you can get numbers that are kind of closer to what a traditional author might pull, then you can really like make a nice amount of money. I know several authors who they regularly make six figures as independent authors, but again, it takes a while to get there. There's some things that need to be established and things like that. So it's nothing that I would expect coming out of the gate, is all I'm saying. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. And I guess I should say that with traditional publishing, it's really helpful to be patient, and it's really helpful to be super flexible, because it can take a year or two just to find an agent, and then for that agent to work with you on kind of grooming the manuscript even further to prepare for them to try to push it to publishers. That may be another 6 months to a year or so. And then on top of that, like even after you get a book deal, it's very often 18 to 24 months before, like from the moment you sign to the moment the book is actually on the shelf for sale. So it could very easily take 3 to 5 years for you to actually traditionally publish a book. Whereas with indie, and it's not guaranteed because you may not find an agent and you may not ever get the book sold, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So that's always a possibility. Whereas with indie publishing, since you're in charge, like you're pretty much guaranteed to publish and you get to control the timeline and things like that. So hopefully that helps flesh out kind of some of the main differences between the two. And again, help you make a decision about what you think is going to work better for you. And again, if you still have questions, just put them in the comments. So a major issue when it comes to being an indie publisher indie author is that people get scammed a lot. It's very easy to scam a new person who's just coming onto the scene as far as publishing is concerned, because they just, you don't know what you don't know, right? You haven't been around for a long time. You don't necessarily have a lot of experiences under your belt that would help guide your decision making. So it is super duper easy for people to take advantage of you, just period, point blank, right? So here are two of my main, I have multiples. I very often say three, but I'm narrowing it down just for time's sake. But it's like these two are like pretty key. If you run into somebody who says that they're a publisher and they're interested in your book, these two things are huge red flags that would make me go, nah, I'm good. Okay. Number one is first contact. Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, they don't go around just randomly calling or emailing people to say, hey, you want to, I see Kawan says, especially in Atlanta. Okay, fair enough, right? There's a lot of scammers, right? And that ties into my story of why I'm no longer an addictions therapist since I've moved to Atlanta, right? But anyway, moving right along, let's not get off on a tangent. What was I saying? So first contact. So the example I often use is like Beyonce doesn't go around knocking on random people's doors saying, hey, you want to be a backup dancer for me at my next concert? If somebody came and said that to you, you would probably not even believe they were Beyonce, because that makes absolutely no sense. I cannot imagine how many people would give a kidney to be Beyonce's backup dancer, right? So why would she be doing that? It makes no sense. She's literally got mountains of people who would be willing to work with her. So that is a huge waste of her time, right? So again, Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, Tor, whoever it is that you're thinking, I want to be published by this company, they very likely have mountains of people beating down their door, right, to get a publishing deal with them. So why in the world would they just randomly email you and be like, hey, we heard you had a manuscript. Would you like to publish that with us? Right? It just, on a very basic level, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So think about that, okay? And understand that if somebody contacts you out of the blue, it literally just happened to me a couple of days ago. Dorrance Publishing reached out via email and were like, hey, you want to publish Intro to Indie Publishing? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, well, first of all, it's done. Like, we're just like scheduling releases and stuff. Like, why are you even contacting? This is weird. And again, that's another one of those details that lets you know something ain't quite right, because they're not even paying attention to who they're sending these emails to. They're just sending them, right? They're just shooting in the dark. They're just, grasping at straws. And businesses, in my experience, businesses that are run well and ethically generally don't do that. They don't do this kind of splatter shot thing of like, oh, we'll see what we get. They go and purposefully seek out people to partner with on a professional level, or they genuinely are plugged into a community of their potential clients. And so it's very easy for them to find clients because people know that they exist. They have people that they've worked with before who can talk to their reputation and their service and all that stuff and refer people to them. They don't need to just randomly email people or randomly call people, right? And they generally understand, because I've worked in a couple of places in my life where they do the whole cold call, telemarketing, spammy type of stuff. And it's just like, it's such a huge waste of time. Like, you can literally sit on the phone all day listening to answering machines or, messages that a number is disconnected and all kinds of stuff. I'm sitting here like, there's got to be a better way to do this, y'all. This is just such a huge waste of time. And it's so much effort to invest. And like, you might get one person that day, who's willing to, buy whatever you have to offer or something like that. So whenever I've seen that in other businesses, that's why when I started WriterWorks University, I knew that that's something we would never do, because that's just, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So I said I wasn't gonna go on a fun tangent, and I did. So number one, if they contact you first, humongous red flag. I have not seen any positive reasons for anybody to be doing that, just contacting you out of the blue about your manuscript. Number two is they ask you that they ask that you pay for publication. Now, as I'm going to show you in a bit, you can publish a book for free pretty easily, and you, in some cases, in less than 24 hours, you can have a book on the market that you can send people to that page and they can start buying it and you can start making money. So if I can do it for free in less than a day, why am I paying you thousands of dollars to do that? Right. So that's another huge red flag. It's just like, that don't sound right. There's something, you got to be offering something else, because actually putting the book on the market for sale does not cost thousands of dollars. Even if you were just paying somebody for their time to do it, it takes less than an hour. So there's still no reason to be paying thousands of dollars, right? So these two things are huge when you're, talking about working with companies and stuff. If they contact you first and they're saying that you have to pay them money in order to publish your book, my advice would be to just walk away. All right, you're not missing anything, trust me. So now here's some traps that we can get into ourselves that I think is really helpful for you to try to avoid. One is the whole idea of getting time. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a hobbyist writer, right, and you just write for the fun of it, kind of when you feel like it, and it's not something you're trying to turn into a career or a consistent source of income, fine. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I want people to write for whatever reason they want to write, because I think writing and books and literature are just awesome, right? So I want to spread that love. That's totally fine. Who this is for is people who say that they want to become career authors, like they want writing and selling their books to be their only, or at least their main source of income. That is their full-time job, is being an author. Everyone I know who is in that position where writing is their full-time thing, they don't have this mentality of, oh, well, when I get some time or when I find some time to write, right? They make time to write. They prioritize their writing, right? Very few things are going to come before sitting down and getting some writing done each day, right? Why? Because if they don't write, they don't eat. Because think about it, most, again, that I know of, right? The successful authors, in the sense of this is my full-time job, they publish consistently. And that's usually somewhere between 3 and 6 times a year for most of the people I know. So how are you going to publish a new piece 3 to 6 times per year if you just write when you feel like it, or when your muse, whatever that even means, when your muse hits you or anything like that, right? If you're just sitting around waiting for time to write to fall into your lap, it's going to be real hard to be a consistent publisher. And if you're not a consistent publisher, it makes it really difficult to consistently make money. So my guidance would be that if you really do want to be a full-time author, you want this to be the way that you make money, push yourself to carve out that time, to make that time, prioritize it, keep it sacred. If you say you're going to write from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Saturday morning, do that. Do not schedule appointments. Do not travel. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing else goes in that 2-hour time slot. That is for you to write, and that is it. So when you're able to be consistent like that, those are the kinds of people that I see being able to quit their day job and, you know what I'm saying, like really sustain their whole family based on their book sales income. So just think about that. The next one is lone wolfing. As I alluded to earlier, even though people call it indie publishing or self-publishing, again, the authors that I know who really succeed and excel in this area do not work alone. They have a book development team. They have a street team. They have groups of people who are their fans or whatever, right? This is a team effort. It takes a village, as people like to say, right? So trying to write and edit and publish a book in a vacuum, me personally, I've never seen that work for anyone, right? all the people where their books really pop off and they really start to get a fan base going and that sort of stuff are doing it alongside other people. They are collaborating with editors and illustrators. They are collaborating with their fellow writers. They are communicating directly and frequently with their fans, that sort of thing. So if you think of this as more of a team effort and you're just like the coach, as opposed to, well, I got to go and do everything by myself and nobody can know this book exists until I publish it, you'll be a lot more successful, right? Generally speaking. So don't lone wolf it, collaborate, reach out. One of the easiest ways is if you are not part of a writing group right now, please become part of one, whether it be online, in person, what have you. Please be part of one, at least one. I'm part of two. Please be at least part of one, right? So that you can go in and you can kind of fellowship with other writers, see what other people are writing, get some feedback on your own pieces, and just kind of steep yourself in the industry, basically. It's a really great, fun, easy way to do that. So another one is rushing. I have had people come to WriterWorks University and be like, oh, well, I got this 200,000 word fantasy novel. Great, wonderful. And it's done. I feel like I've done everything I could do with it. Okay, that is amazing. Wonderful, wonderful. What do you need from us? Okay. Well, from WriterWorks University, I would like you to developmentally edit it. I want you to copy edit it. I need a cover. And I'd also like some character art made. And I want to have it on the market in 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, we are not going to be able to do that. I don't know anybody that's going to be able to do that to any level of quality anyway. Yes, you'll get people who are going to take your money. And I don't mind taking a check either, but I do try to be clear and transparent with people. Like, listen, for a book this size or of this type, or whatever they got going on, you know, it may take a couple of months just to do the initial review of the manuscript, which is essentially like a manuscript evaluation, which is what we do first, just to kind of see what we're dealing with, see where some of the vulnerabilities are, what may need to be adjusted, so on and so forth. So it may take a couple months just to do that. And you want all that and all these other steps done in a couple weeks? Like, it just doesn't even, I think people just don't get it, and which is fine. But a lot of times I found that the reason that people rush like this is because they're trying to sync up their publication date with some just like arbitrary thing, right? It'll be like, oh, this book is about, I don't know, a black necromancer. So I wanted to come out on Halloween, or I wanted to come out in February for Black History Month, or whatever, right? And it's like, okay, I understand, but I would recommend you do it for next year's like Black History Month or next Halloween, because if we rush through and try to do everything that you want to do in such a short amount of time for such a long piece, it's not going to come out well. Like, the quality is just not going to be there. But if you wait, and kind of slow down and do all of these steps in sequence and take your time, you're going to come out with a much higher quality product. So it's like, why wouldn't, let's do that instead. Because I think a lot of people think that sort of gimmick is going to, make them sell 10,000 times more. But it's like, not really. Like, there's so much more that goes into marketing and promoting a book than just the date on which it was released. So while that can be kind of cool, I've never seen it be like, oh man, the only reason in the world that I sold as many books as I did is because I released on this exact date. Like, I've never seen that happen. So don't worry so much about that. Don't be afraid to take your time and get to the point where you have a manuscript that you're really going to be proud to put your name on and ask people to pay money for. And then there's perfectionism. So this is kind of the other end of the spectrum, right? There's people that are rushing, they don't give any thought to quality at all, and they just want to get it done as fast as possible. And then there are people who have been working on the first draft of something for 8 years because they just keep, going over it again and again, and they're not actually moving forward with the book development process. Why? Because they think that there's a such thing as perfect. And I have been reading books since the late 1980s. I've never in my life read a book that had no mistakes. I've never in my life consumed any piece of anything, art, literature, whatever, that had no flaws, no typos, no character inconsistencies, no plot holes, no confusing passages, no cover errors, no, you know what I mean? Like, nothing. There's just nothing wrong with this book. Every single person that reads it, loves it, gives it 5 stars. I've never seen that happen. Okay. So what that lets me know is that, you know what, I should probably relax on this whole perfection thing. Like, right, let me shoot for good enough as opposed to trying to shoot for perfect, because perfect doesn't exist. Therefore, I will chase it forever and never publish anything. But good enough, that exists. And so I can get to good enough and actually publish books on a regular basis and have a decent authorship, right? So I know it's hard. Like everything that I've talked about, these may be things that have been ingrained in you for God knows how long. So I'm not saying that you're just going to snap your fingers overnight and just all of this is going to fly out of your head and your whole perspective is going to change. But if nobody has ever said to you, hey, you might want to rethink this, maybe perfectionism isn't helpful, maybe rushing isn't helpful, maybe lone wolfing isn't helpful, maybe you should think about making time to write instead of just passively waiting to magically get time to write. If nobody's ever said those things to you before, I just want to at least bring them up. Like, hey, here's a couple, things that I see that really shoot authors in the foot, and I don't want it to happen to you. So at least I've put the bug in your ear. I can't, whatever you decide to do after that is totally up to you, but at least you heard it somewhere at least once. So as I was talking about, actually putting a book on the market for sale is super easy, honestly. So for example, you could just download a PDF. So if you're in Word or Google Docs or Dropbox or wherever you write, your manuscript is complete. It's been edited. You got the book design. Everything's ready to go. You can literally just download a PDF copy of the book, go to your website and upload it for sale, put in your price, book description, all that jazz, and you can start selling it. And most people with most websites, I mean, again, that's a 5 or 10 minute process. So that is one of the most direct and fastest ways, right, to literally put your book on the market for sale and start making money. And as I said, that didn't cost you anything. You already have a website, right? You already wrote the book, so you got the file, and just all you're doing is sharing it with people for money. So you may be on Etsy or Gumroad or wherever it is that you want to sell your stuff, or WooCommerce, whatever you want to use, and you just upload the file and you're selling the ebook to people. Totally fine. Super easy, cost you nothing, right? If you want to be exposed to more possible readers, you're going to want to get on a larger platform where people are regularly shopping. And of course, biggest store in the world, right, is Amazon. So getting on Amazon is not hard. It takes about the same amount of time, but the difference is that they do their little quality control review and processing and all of that. So that's why I say, for ebook, you may have to wait a day. For paperback, 2 or 3 days sometimes, at the worst. And that's if nothing goes wrong. There could be problems with the file or something like that. And of course, Amazon will let you know. They'll say, hey, you need to change the size of this, or we found this problem here or whatever, fix it and then, resubmit, and you should be fine. But in general, in less than 24 hours, you could have an ebook on KDP, meaning it's distributed across Amazon for no dollars and no cents. Like, it does not cost you anything. So I'm just going to walk through that process just so you know it exists, right? And understand how it works, just so you can see that. So you would literally just go to kdp.amazon.com. And again, these steps are going to generally be the same for Lulu, Drafted Digital, so on and so forth. Like, there's other platforms where you can, publish your own work. But of course, Amazon is just the biggest one, right? So go to kdp.amazon.com, and just like you created a Facebook page or a TikTok account or whatever, you're just going to fill out your information, verify your identity. You're going to let them know which bank account you want them to deposit your royalty payments into, and you're pretty much ready to go. And that whole process, takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes at worst. So then you log in once your account is set up, and you can go and select what kind of book you want to create. They now offer hardcovers, so you can do an ebook, you can do a paperback, or you can do a hardcover book. And you just select whichever one you want to do and, move on to the next steps. Just complete all the fields. And these little details are nothing major. What language is it in? What's the title? Does it have a subtitle? Is it part of a series? Do you have like a co-author or editor or illustrator or whoever that you want to acknowledge? It'll ask you for the book's description. It's really basic stuff. Then you go over to the paperback or ebook or whichever format you chose, the content, and this is where you're actually going to upload the file, for the book. And so including like the cover file and everything. So for brand new authors, I don't really see an issue with using the free KDP ISBN. Mainly because, again, if you are going to be a career author, you got a lot of other books you want to publish down the line. So often, the most helpful thing you can do for yourself is just get through the process, right? And so I think it's totally fine to just take the free KDP ISBN and go on about your business. You know what I mean? And like, I know you'll hear a lot of discussions about buying your own ISBNs, and that can be valuable. And I do generally recommend it if you're going to be a career author because you got a lot more books coming down the line later. So that's fine. But if you don't have the money right now, or again, you're just kind of scared about the whole process, feel free to go ahead and just take the free KDP ISBN just to kind of keep things moving and get through this process at least once, so that you can kind of see how it works and kind of work out the kinks, if you will, in your process. So, because remember, and again, for some reason, when indie authors do this, people get upset. Yet I see traditionally published authors do it all the time. Like, how many versions of The Stand are floating around, right? How many versions of the Count of Monte Cristo are floating around? You know what I mean? Like, so it's okay to publish a new edition of your book at a later date. There's nothing wrong with that. So you could totally go through, publish with the free KDP ISBN. Once you get more comfortable with the process, you can come back a year or two later and publish a second edition of whatever the book is. Who's going to stop you, right? Like, it's totally up to you, because let's say you decided you want to switch over and you want to start publishing mainly through Ingram. Fine, whatever. All you would need is a different ISBN. And if you've gone and you've purchased a bunch from Bowker, then you got them, and then you can go do that. Like, it's totally fine. So remember that as an indie author, you are in control. Okay, you're the boss. So you can do whatever suits your goals and your needs. So the easiest thing for you to do right now, if you're a brand new author, you, like I say, you're still learning a lot of this stuff, just take the free KDP ISBN. It's not the end of the world, okay? So you'll put in all that information. They will let you preview it to make sure everything looks okay or the way you want it to look before they actually, you know, let you submit it for publication. So you'll have a chance to look at all that. You can make adjustments and then re-upload the file as many times as you need to until you're ready and everything looks the way you want it to. So then this last section is about rights and pricing. It's where you want to sell the book, how much you want to sell it for, so on and so forth. Generally, your marketplace is going to be Amazon.com. Maybe not if you live somewhere else. You know, it may be Amazon.jp or, you know, Amazon.mx or whatever, just depending on what country you're in. But generally, for most people watching this, it'll probably be just Amazon.com. And then there's that big yellow publish button at the bottom, and that's really it, honestly. My recommendation, of course, you do what you want, would be to see how we have at the bottom there, request printed proofs of the book. When you're doing any printed version of anything, my recommendation is always to get a proof copy, have it sent to you, and, you know, look through every page, y'all, because I've seen so many people who come to me and they got really excited, and their excitement just blinded them to all the glaring mistakes in their work that they could have adjusted. And so please slow down. Don't be afraid to spend a week or two just sitting with the book, slowly reading through it, looking at every single page. Read it just like a customer would read it. You'd be amazed how much stuff you'll find just because it's in a different format, because you might be used to seeing it on a computer screen or printed out on, you know, copy paper, but it's a little bit different when it's actually bound and in the trim size that you chose. So go ahead and read it all the way through in that format as well, just to help make sure that you've done everything you can and done your due diligence as far as cleaning up the finished product, right? So then after you've done that, you click that yellow button, and usually with Amazon, within a day or two, if there are no major issues with the file, your book will be live for sale. But again, as I said, short of requesting the printed proofs, because that, you know, you just pay the printing and shipping costs, of course, you know, you don't have to spend any money to do this. You don't have to spend any money at all with an ebook, because that preview is a digital one, right? So there's nothing that they're sending to you. You're just looking at the file, how it would show up on a Kindle or on a tablet or, you know, whatever on the screen. So, but you see how we got through that whole process and we didn't have to spend any money. Didn't have to open our wallet once. So again, if somebody's coming to you and they're saying, "Hey, I will publish your book for X amount of thousands of dollars," ask more questions. If you don't just turn around and run away outright, at least ask more questions. Well, gosh, Tanisha showed me that I could actually publish my book on the largest book platform in the world for $0 and 0 cents. So I'm curious, why would I be paying you, $2,400 to do this? Help me understand, and you can have that conversation if for some reason you feel like you want to keep interacting with this person. So that's that. So here are the 4 stages that I go through for my books. I recommend for other people, and that most of the career authors that I know use when it comes to writing their stuff. So the first step is planning the book. So that's literally just saying, okay, what is going to go into this novel, or what is going to go into this memoir or self-help book or whatever, right? And people use templates. They create blurbs, like preliminary blurbs. They use outlines. I personally use outlines. And again, most of the authors I know that are career authors use some form of outlining. And outlines can look very different. Some people just have like a 3-point outline where it's just like, I know something that happens in the beginning, something that happens in the middle, something that happens towards the end. And that's really all I need. Just kind of like guidepost to keep me from sitting down at a writing session and feeling stuck, or like I don't know what comes next, because I always know what I'm working toward. Right. I know that when I sit down in this section, I'm writing the very first bullet point and I'm working towards the second bullet point. And then the next time it's like, okay, I'm sitting down. I know what I already wrote for the first bullet point. At the second bullet point, and now I'm going to be writing towards the last bullet point, and that's it. That's all they need. And that's fine. I am a special kind of nerd, and I actually use very detailed 3-column outlines that are generally 6 to 7 pages long, and they're pretty detailed. So I will have the chapter, the section, because a chapter may have multiple scenes or whatever in it, and then the third column is just a description of what takes place in that scene. And so I'm not writing it all out per se, but I'm just saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I'll make little notes for myself, like, okay, we want to disclose this information through dialogue. And we want to make sure that she's standing in this part of the room and not that part of the room, and make it clear how they're moving. And, I just make little notes to myself so that when I start writing, I make sure that I write it as cleanly as I can. And that's just really helpful for me, because it makes the whole writing of the book, that very first draft, go super easy and super quickly, because I've already kind of thought through what I'm trying to do. You can try to just wing it, and do what they call pantsing. It's totally fine. It's up to you. I just want you to make an educated decision. The biggest thing that you're going to have to deal with if you decide to write without any kind of framework or planning is that you're probably going to spend a lot more money and a lot more time editing the manuscript. So you may have to essentially rewrite the book 2 or 3 times, the entire thing, in order to get it to the place where it would have been if you would just use the outline in the first place, basically, right? Which is fine. Like I said, you do what you do, but I just want you to be prepared. And then the manuscripts that don't, where you can tell that the author hasn't used an outline, when I get them, it's usually pretty obvious. Honestly, I'm like, okay, you didn't, because you're like repeating yourself, and somebody's hair was red in this scene, and 2 scenes later it's black all of a sudden. There's just all these little balls that you kind of drop because you didn't have a plan. You just jumped in and started writing. So then what happens is you come to me or another firm, and you say, okay, I want you to help me with this developmental editing or manuscript evaluation or whatever service, and it costs a lot more money. I'll give you an example. I literally had a guy who sent me a book that was so long, and it was a self-help book, so it was like, this is weird. It was like literally more than 500 pages long. So I'm like, okay, well, you could probably look at I'm sure you're repeating yourself. Like, you just told me the amount of words, and I'm like, you're probably being redundant. If this is self-help, this is nonfiction. So I don't understand that. And I'm like, you could probably, if you had used an outline, first of all, he would have, been able to see that, he was repeating himself in outline form, erased the places where he was being redundant, and then when he actually started writing the manuscript, he could have just written it without all that extra fat, basically. But then even after that, he didn't do any kind of self revision. So it's like he just wrote it and was ready to hand it off, but he didn't look at it himself. And I thought that that was the case based on how long it was and what he was telling me it was about. I was like, that doesn't match. Because it sounds like you got maybe 100 pages worth of content. Though how you got to 600 pages, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like something's not right. And his bill was going to end up being like, I think it was almost 7K, right? And I'm like, bro, you can look at this yourself, and I'm sure there are places where you've repeated yourself, and just take that out. That'll be a smaller manuscript because we charge by word count, right? It'll be a smaller manuscript, and then that way you'll pay less because you'll be giving us a smaller piece. No, I just want you to do. Okay, like I said, I'll take the check, but I do want you to be informed, right? And do that, make that decision on your own with the appropriate information. So I get the manuscript, I go through, and I cut that bad boy down to about 50 pages. And I even left some of the repetition in, and it was still about 50 pages. And so I'm like, so you literally spent thousands of dollars when you probably could have spent a few dozen or maybe a couple hundreds of dollars, all because you didn't use an outline, basically. You know what I mean? So y'all, this isn't some kind of, I don't know, like fluffy, superfluous thing. Like it can really save you a lot of time, heartache, and money, like to just use an outline. It's such a simple tool, but it can be so powerful if you're willing to use it. So that's all about planning your book. So that's kind of the first step, right? Then producing the book. That means just actually writing the first draft, right? So just making the draft of your book exist. So this is pretty straightforward, especially if you have an outline. You're just, so let's say you have a 27-point outline and you write once a week. Okay. What did I say? Saturday from 8 to 10, you're going to sit down and write whatever the next points are in your outline. Pretty easy. Again, where I see most people get tripped up is that there's a couple of things that they do. One, they don't have a consistent writing schedule. And for some people, that makes things more difficult. So that's why I say, well, if you're having trouble, quote unquote, finding time to write, my recommendation is that you make it, right? And you say, you know what, family, friends, work, whatever. Every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., I am going to be in my office writing. I am not to be disturbed unless someone's bleeding or something is burning down. So appreciate you, but don't schedule no parties, don't invite me nowhere. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. is my writing time. That's it, and that's all, right? And so usually when they do something like that, then all of a sudden, they're flying as far as getting their manuscript written. The other thing is they try to write and edit at the same time, and that slows them down so much that it's really easy to get discouraged. It's really easy to just kind of go off the rails, right? Which like your writing schedule and everything. But when you just sit down and write and aren't trying to correct your grammar, aren't trying to ratchet up the tension or whatever you think may be missing from the scene, you get to the end a lot faster. And then once you get to the end, you got a completed first draft, then you can go in and start polishing it up. But it's a lot harder to do that. It's kind of like pressing the brake and the gas at the same time in your car. It's like, just do one or the other. And then, you know what I'm saying? You can switch back and forth. But in this case, it's like, just write it, just make it exist. And then you can go through and groom it as you're going to do that part anyway. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you might as well just focus on one at a time to make things easier on yourself. All it does is make things less stressful. So when you have a consistent writing schedule and you keep that sacred and you make sure that you're just writing until you get the first draft done and not stopping a whole bunch of times to do a whole bunch of deep edits, it tends to go a lot easier for you. Again, up to you. Then you're polishing the book. So now we've got this first draft out, and now we want to start cleaning it up. And that's self-revision, just like the guy I was just talking about did not do, right? So that means reading it yourself and making adjustments, handing it to people in your critique groups and letting them give you some outside perspective on the book so that you can shore it up. And you can also, at this point, you'll be engaging with professionals, right? So you'll get a developmental editor, a copy editor, yada, yada, yada. So this is just where we're taking the book from good to great, right? We're really shoring it up and grooming it into that final product that's actually going to go on the shelf. Then publishing your book. So what I just showed you on KDP is, like I said, a pretty simple, straightforward way to do it. There are other methods that you can use, but the point is that at this point is where you really want to start uh, actually putting the book on the market for sale. You may schedule events, things like that, to actually get ready to publicize the book. So however you choose to do that is totally up to you. But one thing that I will note is that a lot of people wait until this point to start promoting their book. And I think that that hurts a lot of new writers. You can start promoting your book while you're planning it, at the very least while you're writing it, right? But if you wait until the book is on the market to start telling people that it's available, then you generally shoot yourself in the foot as far as sales go. And I tell people, think about it. When do you know a movie's coming out? Generally, bare minimum, I would say 6 months before it actually hits theaters. When do you know that the new Jordans are coming out, right? When do you know that the cars for a particular car brand are coming out? You don't find out the day that it comes out, right? If a car is going to be available on January 1st, January 1st is not the first day that that company is running ads. They've been running ads since January 1st of last year, most likely, right? Putting out their concepts and, you know what I'm saying, all that sort of stuff. So it can work the same way. It generally does work the same way. Look at traditionally published books, right? Very often they are promoting those books 6 to 12 months ahead of the actual release date. This is giving people time to realize that the book exists, engage with the book in some way. So that could mean getting ARCs or making orders for their bookstore, so on and so forth. And then that way, by the time it's time to release the book, you have all these people who know about it and are rushing to actually go buy it on the given release date, as opposed to them just now hearing about it, right? Because at this point, they don't know anything about it, they haven't heard of it. And it becomes kind of this passing thing where it's like, hey, there's a book over here that you might like. And they kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, sure. Right. And you may have heard before that people need to hear something, I think like 20 times before they act on it. Well, if your book comes out January 1st and that's the first day you start promoting it, that's time one. You got 19 more times to tell people about it before you might actually start to see some sales. Whereas if you started promoting it back in March of the year before, they've heard about it 40 or 50 times, right? And they may have already pre-ordered it, you know what I'm saying? All that stuff. And they're like ready to hit the ground running with some sales by the time you actually get to the January 1st release date. So just keep that in mind. After you publish the book is essentially too late in my mind as far as promoting the book. In theory, you want to start promoting it several months in advance of you actually putting it on the market. So that's it. I am done. So that's the core content that I wanted to go over today. And then in general, because it's called Publish This Year, if you wanted to publish a book this year, meaning by December 31st, you could, right? Especially using the method that I talked about of just tossing it up on your website or throwing it up on KDP. My biggest concern about that, of course, is the quality control, right? Like what quality of book are you going to be producing and trying to convince people to pay for? So you may be able to pull it off if you have something like a children's book that doesn't have a lot of text. And if you already have the illustrations ready, like you really have a manuscript that's ready to go, then I think it could be doable. If you think you're in that position, of course, please reach out. But you could follow those same steps, especially if you set a December release date. I still feel like it might be kind of rushed, but it's not impossible. And you can kind of go through if you've gone through all the development steps already and you're literally just sitting there with a manuscript that you just don't know what the next step is, then I think you're in pretty good shape as far as being able to publish this year. Otherwise, again, don't be afraid to just wait, right? And, publish next year. There's nothing wrong with that. It gives you plenty of time to, like I said, shore up like your interests and your promotions and stuff like that to make sure that once their release date comes, there's a crowd of people who are like ready and willing to actually purchase the book, as opposed to crickets, or maybe you get a handful of like family and friends who will buy it, but that's about it, right? So Here's all our contact information, or if you want to follow on social media or anything like that. So now I am going to take a sip of water. And if you have any questions, please put them on. Please just put them in the comments so that I can read them and answer them if you have them. And if you don't, that's totally fine too. I'll show Kawan when he was talking about or she, I don't know, when Kawan, I'm just gonna say that, was talking when I was talking about the scamming situation. It yeah, it was rough. So like I said, I had run into some similar unethical people is the word I'm going to use in the medical industry, and so it was just like it was rough. Like, but I had to get out of that situation. I was fine when I was living in Kentucky, but like I said, I got to Atlanta, and it was just like, oh my goodness, okay, y'all are hurting more than you're helping. Um, okay, well, you had another one. Okay, so you've done a lot of genres. Which genre is most successful? Oh, interesting. Um, that's hard to say. Like I would say for me personally, it's about even just because I tried to, and I really did fight it for a long time. I don't know why. I was just being lazy, I guess. But I really fought segmentation for a long time. Even though most people who have like newsletters and stuff will tell you, like, no, no, that's the way to go. And it really is. I'll say the same thing now. But I fought it for a long time. And because I just didn't want to do the work of separating everybody. But once I found some decent automation tools, it wasn't, it's not a big deal now. So now when people go to sign up for my newsletter, they can select which genres they want to get notices about, right? So that way, when I when I put out erotica, I'm only sending it to people who are interested in erotica. Or when I write, I don't know, a science fiction novel, I'm only sending it to people who are interested in science fiction. And so then that way, I'm able to bring value to people without, because it can feel kind of spammy if you have an author who writes in multiple genres and they're like constantly emailing you, and half the emails are, not genres that you read, you know what I mean? So that way I'm able to narrow it down and everybody gets exactly from me what they want. So I would say they're pretty much even in general. One genre that I haven't really, that I'm working on a book for now, that I haven't really done before is romance. Now, again, I've done erotica, but again, the focus is more on the sex, so it's not quite the same, right? Like there's a bit of plot there, but it's just basically to string together the sex scenes, essentially, right? So erotica does do pretty well, especially this. I just released an audiobook version of one of my books, one of my erotic shorts, and I didn't know what to expect, but it's done a lot better than I thought it would. So that could be pretty cool. But overall, like if you were interested in general, it's romance, like hands down. Um, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So if for some reason you were only writing to make money, I would definitely say that if I had to pick a genre for that reason, it would be romance. But like I said, I if you don't know of any of my work, I am a very I write really dark stuff. So me trying to write a romance novel where nobody's maimed, nobody's psychologically harmed, no, you know what I mean? Like it's really an exercise for me. It's really a stretch because my creative muscles tend darker, Um, so I haven't technically tried it yet. So I will report back, right? Once I see. But I think it's really about finding your people, like so for example, I just found out a couple of years ago that dinosaur erotica existed, and I was like, haha, that's got to be a joke basically. Right? So but I go and look at it, it's like, no, 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 these people are making like lots of books, whole series. Hundreds to thousands of people are not only purchasing and reading these books, but they are leaving reviews. So like, no, no, there's a whole market, right? And so I'm sure that some of those dinosaur erotica writers make more money than I do, you know what I mean, in some of the genres I write in. All right. So I think, like I said, even though romance is kind of statistically, you know what I mean, just taking up most of the book market, it just, you know, it's a beast. I think I personally wouldn't recommend writing to a market for that reason, because I think it can feel like more of a chore and it'll be harder to do and it'll feel more like work, as opposed to writing what you love to write and simply making sure that you position yourself to find people who like what you write. You see what I'm saying? And then that way, you like these dinosaur erotica folks, or and again, there are other niche markets where I'm like, oh my God, you got how many reviews? Like, how many people are reading this? Right. So um when you find your people and you really connect with kind of this community that loves that sort of writing, okay, like you said, Kawan, dark fantasy, right? Then you're still good to go, because you're going to keep feeding those people who are loving what you write. And it's kind of like you almost have nowhere to go but up at that point, right? You're going to start off with the first book and, you know, you're going to get some followers, and then the next book comes out, you'll get some more. The next book comes out, you'll get some more. You, of course, refer them back to the first book, and it just kind of creates this cycle, you know what I mean, of you building up a platform, so that every time you publish, you have these masses of people who are clamoring for your work, regardless of what genre it's in. So I think every author can create that dynamic for their authorship. It just takes a little bit of strategic thought and a little bit of time, but you can do that no matter what. I get, so I guess to really, I went all over the place. I'm so sorry. I got it. I think for me right now, because I've been doing so many shows and stuff like that, and you know, running Writer Works University, I think for me right now, my best selling genre is really my nonfiction, right? The workbooks and stuff like that related to writing, because I'm constantly referring people to it when I'm at these conferences and things like that. And I'm like, hey, well, you know, instead of me sitting there having a 45-minute conversation with you about outlining, here's a book I wrote about it. You know what I mean? And then they go buy it. And so it's like, okay, cool. So I think for me right now, at this point, it's really my writing guides and publishing guides and stuff. But great question. Thank you for that. All right, who else we got? Okay, Michael. Would I speak to Ingram Spark? Okay. Um, I mean, yes. Like, um, so Ingram compared to KDP, right? The reason I don't normally recommend Ingram to people who are new is just because it's a more sophisticated platform. And when the platform is more sophisticated, it's a little bit more difficult to use, right? It's just like, oh, okay. There's like the coffee maker that you have at the office, right? Type situation, or on your kitchen counter, is it can't do a whole lot. It doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. It just, you know, filters the hot water through the coffee and gives you a cup of coffee, right? Then there's like these fancy schmancy espresso machine type situations with all these buttons and knobs and switches and settings and stuff like that. So the output is going to be very different, right? You're probably going to get a much more kind of customized, different, you know, different kind of coffee experience from that machine than you would just from the regular schmegular. I think it's called a drip coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, by the way. This is an example that popped in my head. Drip coffee that you would get from just like a regular schmegular $30 machine you got at Walmart. So if somebody's a new author, i.e. they're new to making coffee, I'm going to recommend the drip coffee maker, because that's a quick, easy way to get the results that you're looking for, at least to some extent. And then once you start to get really comfortable with the drip coffee maker, then you might want to graduate over to something that's a little more sophisticated. So Ingram is cool, if you know how to use it, right? If you're comfortable with that. The other thing about Ingram is that, again, you're working more as almost a traditional publisher might, right? Similar, not exactly. And so there are a lot more fees and things involved, because they're going to be essentially an avenue for you to get your book into like bookstores and libraries and things like that a little bit easier than you would if you were doing something through KDP. So it's just like I said, because of all of those nuances, and there are other things, it's just the general idea is it's a little more complex. Well, it's a lot more complex in some ways than KDP. So I generally start our clients off with KDP if they're first time authors, because that's difficult and overwhelming enough when you're brand new. And if they come to me at a later date and say they want to do something a little more sophisticated, I don't mind walking them through how to use Ingram. But it's not what I would start with. So, Michael, if you're like a new author, like I wouldn't necessarily recommend starting off with Ingram simply because, of that whole learning curve. KDP, or like I said, selling directly through your website or something like that, to me makes more sense, just so you can kind of ease your way into it and be as comfortable as possible throughout the process, as opposed to feeling like, you don't know what's going on and you're confused and frustrated and, that sort of stuff. So that would be my take. I know some people like Ingram. Sometimes there's kind of I don't know what I want to say. Ingram and Amazon don't always communicate well with one another, right? They don't always play nice. And so there'll be situations where it's like somebody's put their book through Ingram and they just want to distribute it to Amazon, and they do that. But then Amazon will say, oh, okay, well, this book is available for sale, but you might not get it for like 3 weeks or some crazy, shipping estimate. Which, okay. I mean, like, I understand you don't necessarily know how long it's going to take Ingram to ship stuff out, but first of all, it's not usually that long. I don't know why, it's just weird. I guess just to discourage people from buying it from Ingram, but I don't know. It's weird. Like, what they do between one another is just bizarre sometimes. So that's another reason why some people kind of say, okay, I'm going to go one or the other. But honestly, you can do both. I've done both. It's not a big deal. I think Ingram, like I said, the major thing that a lot of people like about it is just, like I said, that whole bookstore thing. Again, there's nothing wrong with having your books in bookstores, I guess, but I would take a look at, is that worth, the extra effort and time that you would, and sometimes cost that you would need to put in order for that opportunity, right? Like, are you in a situation where somebody is going to see your book on the shelf and that's going to translate into like thousands of more sales, or like, what do you think it's going to do for you to the point where you want to jump in the deep end like that? So I would just think about stuff like that. But yeah, generally speaking, I would just say go with KDP. You're fine, especially just starting out. Yeah, I hope that answered. I mean, if you have other questions, like, go for it. But that's all I really have to say about it. Okay. Kawan writes dark fantasy. So, yeah, I mean, that's a market. I don't think that's nothing super niche or anything like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just write, like I said, stories that you enjoy writing, which very often reflect the kind of stuff we enjoy reading, and therefore, you're having fun, right? I know writing books is not the easiest thing in the world. But that's why I say, if you just write what you love, it just takes that edge off, right? Because it doesn't really feel like work. You're just having a good time. You just happen to be making some profits while you're having a good time. And nothing's wrong with that, I don't think. All right. Do we have any other questions? And I'm going to check my social media to make sure nobody DM'd me. Uh-oh. My cracks. This nonsense on my phone. Okay. Well, I think we are good. Okay, nothing on there. Okay, well, because if y'all don't have any more questions, then we are pretty much done until next time, my friend. And again, you can ask about me. You can ask about WriterWorks University. You can ask about publishing process, the writing process, like whatever you like. Feel free. I can't promise I'll have all the answers, mind you, but I will certainly try to at least point you in the right direction if it's something where I'm like, I have no idea. But I can't remember last time I really got a question where I was just like completely stumped. Like I just had no, no inkling of what this person was talking about or anything like that. Okay. No other questions. I'm not seeing any other comments. And I appreciate Kawan and Michael for contributing. I'm hoping that this silence means that I just did such an awesome job that you guys feel completely like satiated as far as your curiosity about this process. Oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. All right. Well, then I'm going to call it a day, my friends. Again, I've been traveling a lot, dealing with the passing of my father and all that. So I know I haven't been doing these as regularly as I once was, but I do plan to kind of get back on the wagon and do these on a consistent monthly basis. So if you do come up with any kind of questions or anything, you can reach out to me directly online, or you can just save it until the next one in the following month, and just hold your question until then, and I'll answer it for everybody. Um, yeah, but that's about it. Okay, so I will talk to you all later. Oh, I guess I should say while I'm here, don't forget that the Atlanta Self Publishing Conference is happening again next year. So I'm very excited about that. I will be your member experience manager, is what I'm calling myself. And so I will not be directing it this year, but I will be helping out. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll get some more information out to you later about like pricing and all that type of stuff. Once again, it's going to be the last Saturday in April, and there is a Facebook event and everything that you can use to like RSVP or just get reminders and stuff about it. If you're not already, you can also sign up for the Atlanta Writers Club newsletter, which will have information in it about the self-publishing conference as well. And it's just a really great opportunity for you to get in the room with a bunch of people who either have or are interested in publishing their own work. And that way you can kind of learn some of the skills, get some updated market data, buy some books, so on and so forth. And just kind of, like I said, just fellowship and plug into the indie authorship community, because that's, in my humble opinion, how you keep your authorship and your career healthy and growing. So keep that in mind. So just stay tuned, or we're on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, right? Atlanta Self Pub Con. Yeah, at ATL Self Pub Con. Lord have mercy. At ATL Self Pub Con, if you want to follow us. And I'll be posting more videos and stuff like that on those social media sites just related to, self-publishing and whatnot. Okay, well, I'm out of here. Thank you all so much for your participation, and I hope to hear from you soon.